Hello again, and welcome to clip 3. We're going to kick off with a bit about health and safety. Okay, I think it's important to understand that in your exam you're going to be asked about this, and it's important that you've got some sensible scenarios and ideas about what health and safety is about. I think it's important to say avoid the doomsday scenarios of people dying, being electrocuted and all of that sort of stuff. Okay, those things are unlikely to happen, but the key to keeping people safe is a good risk assessment. Okay, and in any sort of scenario, we do them when we take you on school trips. We do them in school for specific classrooms like the DT room or the sports hall. There are risk assessments for everything you do and everywhere you go. And basically what a risk assessment does is it identifies potential hazards and dangers, decides who might be harmed and how, evaluates the risks and decides if it's really risky, if a precaution needs to be taken, and then details what those precautions are. So, for example, if you're going on a school trip, one of the things we do is we count you onto the coach, we count you before you get on the coach, we count you when you're on the coach, we count you when you get off the coach, so that we know that we haven't lost anybody on the way. We do the same coming back. That's part of any good risk assessment on a school trip. Now, your exam isn't about school trips, it's about creation of content. So you might be asked about, for example, a question that came up yesterday, risk assessment for the filming of a TV documentary. Now, hopefully in your exam, the scenario at the start would have said a bit about what the documentary was about. If it was a wildlife documentary, for example, and you were out near sort of animals that prey on other animals, it might be that some of the health and safety and the risk assessment is about keeping the film crew and the cast safe. And it would detail sort of sensible measures to take to make sure that you weren't being snuck up on by lions and tigers and bears and all that sort of stuff. That's a very specific example, though. It could actually be just simple things like, lighting equipment, which is often used in the production of TV shows and films, needs to be secured so that it doesn't fall and injure somebody. That's a perfectly relevant example for that TV documentary. Similarly, environmental conditions. You don't want the film set to become overly hot. It needs to be well ventilated, or if you're filming somewhere that's really cold, you need to make sure that people are able to keep warm. There will be some sensible things that you can think about. Think about wiring. There's got to be wires around. If they're not secured to the ground, if they're not safely sort of fastened down, they become trip hazards that can lead to people being injured. So think of some sensible things. Okay, don't go for the doomsday stuff. But when you're on site or on location, some of the things that you would do in advance of that TV documentary is you might do something called a recce, RECCE, where you go to the location that you're going to film first and you look for what the dangers are. You find out where the trip hazards are, you find out where the potential falls are, the potential slips, so that you're aware of them and you can inform the film crew and other people about what could possibly go wrong before you get there. It might be information about location, how easy it is to access, the lighting, the health and safety issues, availability of power, environmental conditions, those sorts of things. And just what to do if something's going to go wrong. Obviously, there are ways that you can injure yourself just using computers. We've talked in class about eye strain, for example, after staring at computer screens for a long time, especially if you're doing it in bad light. It's terrible for your eyes long term if you're using a screen in the dark, because it's forcing your eyes to deal with a lot of light when there isn't ambient light around. It takes the pressure off your eyes if the lights are on. And eye strain's a real thing. I've talked to the students that I have in class know about, and I gave the example of my grandma who worked with computers for decades and needed eye drops for the rest of her life because her eyes had just dried up too much from using screens and all of that time. So eyes can become strained after staring at a computer screen for a long time, especially when working in bad light. And you're going to have solutions for these things. Things like not sitting too close to the screen, taking regular breaks, focusing on something that's far away, focusing on something that's close, far away and close, just to keep the focus muscles of the eyes going. You can injure your back. This can be because of poor posture, sitting in a bad position or an awkward position. So make sure you've got a fully adjustable chair. Make sure you've got a footrest so your legs are at a natural angle, and take regular breaks. But get up and walk around. Don't slouch in your chair, and have a monitor that's at eye level so that you're not having to strain yourself or put yourself in an unnecessary position to see the screen properly. you can get repetitive strain injury. We're all going to get it in our thumbs if we're not careful from all the time we spend doing this on our phones. It's damage to the fingers and wrists due to repeated movements over a long period of time. I'm talking years, not minutes or hours. So don't worry, you're fine in a 55-minute lesson. But again, there are things you can do to help. Computer-based, using wrist rests, taking regular breaks, ensuring workstations are the correct height so that you're not having to elevate your arms any more than you need to do to access the keyboard. And obviously we've talked about the possibility of tripping over cables and how they need to be secured down and stuff like that. Lights can become hot, so make sure that areas are well ventilated. Lighting can be heavy, especially sort of, lights that might be used in filming and things like that. So they need to be secure so that they can't fall, and wires need to be tucked away so they're not trip hazards. If you're working at height, for example, if you're filming up high, there's a risk you could fall. There's a good example for your TV documentary question from yesterday. So to be safe, you need to wear safety gear. Might be a hard hat, you might need barriers, you might need to be tied in just in case you fall. And heavy equipment. To avoid injury and back pain, you should be using correct lifting techniques. This is in your revision guide. Make sure you've read it and have a good look at it. People shouldn't strain themselves lifting things that they can't comfortably carry. And that's the end of this section. Okay, we've talked a little bit about health and safety there and risk assessments, and we're going to come back in clip 4 to talk about file formats and naming conventions and some other things.